When you've got your trestles in place, your laminated top ready to go, you might want to work on the underside because this will ensure that you don't damage the top. All I'm going to do is clamp here and clamp here. You might spin this around, you can put it elongated underneath, whatever you want. You just have to try and experiment with it to get it to its optimum performance level. I'm going to try this and see how it works. I don't know yet, but I think this is going to work for me. It feels solid, but there you have the problem. So I'm going to just try something else. Just stay with me just for a minute. Spin this one around this way and elongate it like that, just to see if this helps me. And if it does, I'll be ready to work on my next stage, which is planing upwards. That already, because I'm going to be planing in this direction, it means that it's going to be more stable for me. So that's one thing I thought about doing. Another thing is I'm going to be working on the apron boards first. I'll be doing the well boards also. When you've got this underside here, you could just simply drive a screw in here like this and use that as a stop. This is the underside, it's not going to be seen. Drive the screw down till it's about 1/2 inch protruding, butt that up against it, and we're ready to surface plane this one board. I've got one side that's nice and flat, but this side was rough sawn, so I'm going to go with my plane. That's my scrub plane, and I may want to use that. I'm going to take off the surfaces first, and this is skipping over the undulation, just like when we did the bench top. So I work this down just the same way until I'm through the saw mark, through the saw curve. And then I sight again for flatness, got a belly in the middle. Work back. We've got to get this flat, we've got to get it fairly straight. And we're going to check it in a minute, just for wind. So I'm down now through all the saw curve. A bit of a belly in the middle. Good workout for sure. And would I do much more than that? Probably not, because when you've planed this surface, this goes against the bench top when we glue this together, so that's all it needs. So I'm going to do the edge next to make sure that works and is nice and true. Square. So if this, I can sight one edge to the other, or I can go for my winding sticks. The winding sticks will be more accurate, probably, especially if you're not used to it. See, I do have a little twist in there. I do want to take some of that twist out just to make sure I don't put too much pressure on this later. Fighting me a little bit. See what we got now. This is very good exercise, I think. And that's good. I'm happy with that. So now I've got to get the edge done. Pretty simple. I've got this one, so it's sitting on the bench this time. Here. I'm going to clamp this one to the bench top. Just to stabilize it, really. Then I need a square. Actually, that's pretty good. So if you've got a jack plane, it'll help you. But the smoothing plane will do it. So I'm looking to get this as straight as I possibly can, but I'm also, the more important would be to get it square. There's enough flex in this type of wood so that if it's not perfectly straight, if it has a slight belly on, say on the narrow one or on this one will pull the other to it, and that would be perfectly fine. You don't have to worry too much about it. Get the main body down and then back the iron off. You just kiss off those fibres and then check yourself. A little bit high on the outside here. Consistent now. So I'm going to place my plane on this side, but I don't cut the plane over. I just run the plane along this edge here. Like this. A little bit more. It is a little awkward. But you can do it. feel like I didn't move that very much at all. That's good. Good. And good. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to make a mark. This one here, face mark, face edge. And then I'm going to work on the next one exactly the same way. And I'm going to bring those two together, marry them up, and then glue them. So I'm ready to try this, see how well we've done. No guarantees. It's much easier when you can edge joint the two together, but when it gets this big, it's not quite so easy because you don't have the width in your plane. So I'm going to offer this. And I've got a definite ridge here, which can be to your advantage. If you have a gap here and a gap here, I've got one already completed there, and I did the same with that, and that's why I have 3 clamps on that, because it's what we call a spring joint, where we allow this edge, the belly on one edge, so that when we clamp the two together, we can just use 3 clamps. But this is a little bit too much. So I'm going to work a little bit to check myself. That one was good, I remember that. So I'm going to go with this one. Actually, it looks pretty good too. But I can see it there. This is fun. This should be as fun as any part in it, getting everything tweaked and enjoying the process. So I'm high here. So stay square. Let's give that a whirl. Well, let's give it a try, see what we've got. Minor gaps can be clamped out, remember, so don't overstress on this. Feels good. And how does it look? I'm happy that that will clamp fine. So let me take this off. See if I feel the same when it's lying down. It's all dependent on whether the edges are square as well. Let's put a clamp across here. I'm going to dry clamp it first, just to see what I've got. Got one awkward clamp here. There we go. Better to dry clamp it, see where you end up. Yeah, I've got my gap here, so when I pull these two together, hopefully, this will pull it. We'll see how it looks. It doesn't take anything, it's not even 5 pounds of pressure to pull this long edge together without gaps. I've got a perfect seam along here. I'm perfectly happy, that's what we want. So this next step is very simple. I'm going to get rid of these clamps here and use them. And really, like I said, if it is slightly bellied in the middle, you probably will manage with 2-3 clamps. Zigzag of glue along here. This is so exciting. We're getting the aprons together, we've got the laminated top together. And we are good to go, really. We're getting this ready for other elements to come together, joinery and stuff like that. And one down here. Just to seal off the edge, make sure we have a continuous glue right along this edge. And then, so I'm rub jointing, take it apart. We are good. Bring this up. Flush. We still haven't finished surface planing. We're going to be planing this again afterwards at a later stage, not just now. After this is glued up, everything's dried, we're going to go back in, surface plane to get the joint line down, everything flush and so on. A little bit of pressure, not too much, because that will cause it to slide if you put too much pressure on. Up to this end. You can lie this down on the bench top too. This is working just fine for me. Whichever way you feel comfortable will work. So I'm going to put this on the bench top now. So that's closing up my joint line. A little bit of glue. This is flush. This is flush. The middle section is not flush. You can add more clamps if you want to, but this is going to be adequate for me. And then we're going to pound here because this is not flush. There's a good knot to pound on. And that's it. So it's flush. Cinch them tight. Give a couple of seconds. Leave it for 30 seconds and then go back and cinch them again just to make sure everything is tight. Wipe off the excess glue because it will harden and it will be hard on your plane. And also this will speed up the drying process inside. And that's it. Great. We are good. Leave it overnight, preferably. Great. I'm going to cut my legs to length, and in my case, I know the length, the height of my bench. I know the length of the leg is 34 3/8. That's the height that I want my that will be part of the calculation for the height of my bench. But you may want yours an inch or two taller. Just make your legs longer and cut them off later. Depends on how you work it out. So mine are 34 3/8. I'm going on two edges and a flat face. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to cross cut one face here. And I'm following this flat face, this wide face here now. Now I'm going to spin it to here, so I'm keeping my saw in the kerf to keep it square. Down into the adjacent face now, so now I'm down into this face. There's not much left in here now. Whoops. This is the underside of my bench, but I'm going to bring this over here just to clear the saw. Like that. So I've got a nice clean cut. My second one, I'll take this one. I'll use this one for my pattern now, and I'll mark all the other 3 off this one and cut those to length. Plane them, surface plane them, that's what we do next. We're ready to surface plane the legs. I say surface plane, we want them to be true, so I'm going to true up one face and one adjacent edge. Make sure they're straight, make sure they're not twisted, make sure that one edge is square to the next. The other 2 adjacent faces are less important because we're going to use these 2 reference faces for all our layout. So I'm going to surface plane this first one here, the wide face. Just till it's smooth, and then I'm going to check it for twist and such like that, because if these faces are twisted, then the chances are your leg frame will be twisted, and that's why we have to work this down to get it right. Bit of a dip in there. Let's see how it is for twist. Winding sticks, make sure these are centered on, don't leave one over one side because it'll tilt it. A little bit of twist, thankfully not much. So I'm high here. And the winding sticks, they do exaggerate the twist. This fits into this 4 times, so it'll be exaggerating that twist 4 times. So remember that. Don't think you have to take a lot off. If it's rocking like that, take this, slide this underneath here, and hopefully that'll stop it rocking. It's a good workout, this one, I'll tell you. Got. No twist. That's great. That's wonderful. Now I can use this as my registration face, my first registration face. So I'm looking at these pieces. This looks like an easy enough face. Both of them do. I'm going to make this my face mark, come onto this edge, and surface plane this, eyeball it. This one has got twisting even before I start, so I can even take remedial action for that with my improvised scrub plane, I hope. So I'm going to use this to take out some of this rougher cut face here. So I eyeball one end to the other till it looks close, and then I can go with my winding sticks. I can go with my smoothing plane too. I'm going to take this a heavier cut here. So now I'm working parallel across my surface. To get through the saw curve. But I work equally across the face, one side to the other, like this. Winding stick. I'm going to use the winding sticks, but I could just use the square because I have that registration face. But this is quicker, and I've got that twist out, so I'm happy with that. Now, this is where I check myself for square. And I'm out of square. I'm high on this side. I'm going to go with a heavier plane. This is the advantage. I'm going to use a jack plane here. Just for a little bit of extra weight, really. So I got my foot going down to the trestle leg. I use the back leg for that one when I'm over there, just to give me a little bit of extra stability. And there's my square. I'll be glad when I have a bench, because then I'll have a place for everything and everything in its place. Now I'm square. I'm happy with that. Face mark onto this edge here. And then I'm just going to simply plane up the additional faces, the other two faces, get them smooth, get them level. Like this. And I will check the widths after I've done this to make sure I'm parallel to the opposite face. That will really help me to know that I'm parallel. Every inaccuracy has a knock-on effect, a domino effect, that affects the adjacent piece. So check yourself. Let me see what I got. 2 3/4. 2 3/4. 2 3/4. That's a 30-second under 2 3/4, but I can live with that. Next face here. Got a hump in this one. This one's straight. This one's got a hump in it. So I've got to deal with that. Where is my back leg? My heart is beating, 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 beating. Heavy cut there, too heavy. Backing off my iron. I'm going to live with this because this was part of the palette. I'll show you a nice bench when I'm done. I'm going to check my width again. See how well I'm doing. So I've got 3 3/4, a 64th over, 3 3/4, 32nd over, 3 3/4, a 32nd over, 3 3/4, a 32nd over. I'm perfectly happy with that. This is a bench. It's perfect. Great.